A black girl performed CPR on the Apache man she saved from drowning, unaware of the consequences. As the trembling seamstress breathed life back into the warrior's lungs beside the raging floodwaters, the townspeople saw her as nothing but thread and needle, destined for invisible servitude until death. But this Apache translator carried sacred peace treaties between warring cultures, his survival now binding their fates through ancient ritual she unknowingly performed. Her forbidden act of mercy has awakened sleeping powers within courthouse secrets and tribal ceremonies alike, threatening to unleash forces that could either unite two peoples or ignite the very war he came to prevent. Will her compassionate choice become the bridge to lasting peace, or the spark that destroys everything both communities have fought to protect? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Eva Morse pressed the needle through the worn fabric, her calloused fingers working steadily in the dim back room of Henderson's general store. The familiar sounds of customers drifted through the thin wooden wall. "That girl thinks she's better than her station," Mrs. Patterson's voice carried clearly. "Reading books like she's some kind of scholar. Unnatural, if you ask me," came the reply. "A seamstress should know her place." Eva's jaw tightened. She had heard these whispers her entire life in Copper Ridge Township. 22 years of being invisible, dismissed, expected to fade into the background like dust on old furniture. The bell above the front door chimed. Heavy boots crossed the wooden floor. "Judge Whitmore." Mrs. Patterson's tone shifted to honey-sweet respect. "What brings you by today?" Through the crack in the door, Eva glimpsed the tall figure in the black coat. Judge Cornelius Whitmore commanded respect wherever he walked. His silver hair and stern features made even the boldest men step aside. "Just checking on my order," he said quietly. Eva frowned. The judge had no pending orders. She would have remembered. His eyes seemed to search the store, lingering on the backroom door. Thunder rumbled overhead. The afternoon sky had darkened without warning, heavy clouds rolling in from the desert. Eva set down her needle and moved to the small window. Rain began pelting the glass in thick drops. "Flash flood weather," someone muttered outside. Within minutes, the gentle rain became a torrent. Water rushed down the main street, turning dust into rivers of mud. Eva had seen desert storms before, but this one felt different. Dangerous. She grabbed her shawl and stepped outside. The trading post sat at the edge of town where the creek bent toward Apache territory. During storms, that bend became a death trap. Other townspeople gathered under awnings, watching the spectacle. The creek had become a raging brown monster, carrying broken branches and debris at frightening speed. "Someone's down." "There!" a man shouted. Eva squinted through the rain. A figure struggled in the water near the trading post, fighting against the current. A horse thrashed nearby, its eyes wild with terror. "It's one of them Apaches!" someone called out. "Let the savage swim," another voice replied. "Not our problem." The crowd murmured agreement. Eva watched in horror as the man in the water went under, surfaced, then disappeared again. His horse managed to find footing and scrambled up the far bank, but the rider was gone. "He's drowning," Eva said, stepping forward. "Good riddance," Mrs. Patterson sniffed. "One less problem for decent folk." Eva's heart pounded. The man's head broke the surface again, arms flailing weakly. He was maybe 50 yards downstream, caught in an eddy that spun him like a broken doll. She looked around at the faces surrounding her. Cold, indifferent. Some even showed satisfaction at the sight of a human being dying before their eyes. Eva kicked off her shoes. "Girl, what are you doing?" Dr. Henderson grabbed her arm. She pulled free and ran toward the water. Behind her, voices rose in protest and disbelief. The current hit her like a sledgehammer. Cold water filled her mouth and nose as she fought to keep her head up. The man had gone under again. She could see his dark hair just beneath the surface. Swimming had never been taught to her, but summers by the creek had made her strong. She pushed through the churning water, lungs burning. Her fingers found fabric, then skin. She wrapped her arm around the man's chest and kicked toward the bank. The crowd had moved closer, watching with reluctant fascination as she dragged the unconscious Apache onto the muddy shore. His lips were blue, No breath stirred his chest. "He's dead," Dr. Henderson pronounced. "Waste of effort." Eva ignored him. She had read about this in one of the medical books she borrowed in secret. Rolling the man onto his back, she tilted his head and opened his mouth. Then she pressed her lips to his and breathed. The crowd gasped. A woman saving an Apache man was shocking enough. But this intimate contact crossed every line their society had drawn. Eva breathed into his lungs again. And again. She pressed her hands against his chest the way the book had described, counting compressions. "Get away from him," Dr. Henderson commanded. "This is unseemly." She kept working. Breathe, press, count, breathe, press, count. The Apache man's body convulsed. Water poured from his mouth as he gasped and coughed. His eyes opened, dark and confused. "Thank you," he whispered in clear English. Dr. Henderson stepped back. "I won't treat him. Take your savage somewhere else." The crowd began to disperse, muttering disapproval. Eva helped the man sit up, noting his fine clothes and the leather pouch tied securely around his waist. "You need medical attention," she said. "The doctor refuses." His voice grew stronger. "But you have knowledge, yes? I can see it in how you brought me back." Eva hesitated. Her secret education was dangerous enough without advertising it. But this man would die without help. "Come with me," she said. As they walked away from the creek, the Apache man studied her with growing intensity. "The sacred breath," he murmured. "You gave me the sacred breath." Eva didn't understand, but something in his tone made her shiver. Behind them, Judge Whitmore watched from beneath the awning, his expression unreadable. Eva led the Apache man to her small cabin behind the general store. His breathing remained labored, and she could see the early signs of lung congestion from the dirty creek water. "Sit here," she said, pointing to her only chair. The man's dark eyes followed her movements as she gathered supplies. Clean cloth, a bottle of whiskey for disinfection, dried herbs she had collected from the desert. "What is your name?" he asked. "Eva Morse." She avoided his gaze. "Yours?" "Ayanna Crow Feather." She began cleaning the cuts on his arms where the rocks had scraped him. His skin was cold, but his pulse grew stronger under her fingertips. "You have learned healing," Ayanna said. It was not a question. Eva's hands stilled. "I know some things." "Where?" She resumed her work without answering. The truth was too dangerous. For 3 years, she had snuck into Dr. Henderson's office after hours, borrowing his medical texts. She practiced on injured animals she found in the desert, a coyote with a broken leg, a hawk with a damaged wing. Most lived. "The sacred breath," Ayanna said again. "Do you understand what you have done? I saved your life. More than that." He watched her prepare a poultice for his chest. "Among my people, when someone gives the breath of life, they become spirit siblings, bound by ceremony." Eva's hands trembled slightly. "I don't know your ceremonies. The spirits do not care if you know. They care only about the act." Ayanna's voice grew serious. "You breathed life into me when I walked toward the spirit world. This creates sacred bonds." She applied the poultice to his chest, noting how his breathing eased. The herbs were working. "What does that mean?" she asked. Before Ayanna could answer, horses thundered outside. Eva peered through her small window. A group of Apache riders approached, their faces painted and weapons visible. At their head rode an older man with silver streaking his black hair. "My uncle," Ayanna said, struggling to stand. "Chief Standing Bear." Eva's blood turned cold. Apache in the town meant trouble. The territorial conflicts had grown worse each month, with raids and retaliation on both sides. The door opened without a knock. Chief Standing Bear entered, his presence filling the small cabin. His eyes took in everything: Ayanna's improved condition, Eva's medical supplies, the careful way she had treated his nephew. "You are the one," he said to Eva in perfect English. "Sir, I only helped because he was drowning." Chief Standing Bear studied her face with unsettling intensity. You performed the sacred breath ceremony. My nephew has told me. I don't understand your ceremonies, Eva said. Understanding is not required, only the act itself. The chief moved closer. You have become his spirit sister through the ancient ritual. This bond cannot be broken. Eva looked between the two men, confusion mounting. I was just trying to save his life. And in doing so, you have bound yourself to our people. Chief Standing Bear's expression remained neutral. There are consequences to this bond. Horses approached from town. Through the window, Eva saw Judge Whitmore riding hard with several townsmen behind him. His face showed panic. Chief Standing Bear, the judge called as he dismounted. What brings you to town? The Apache leader stepped outside to meet him. Eva and Ayana followed. My nephew nearly drowned. This woman saved him using sacred ceremony. The chief gestured toward Eva. She is now spirit sister to our tribe. The townsmen shifted nervously. Eva saw Mrs. Patterson and Dr. Henderson among them, their faces showing disgust and fear. That girl doesn't represent our town, Dr. Henderson said. She acted on her own. Nevertheless, she has created sacred bond. Chief Standing Bear's voice carried absolute authority. According to our laws, she must serve as cultural bridge between our peoples. Judge Whitmore stepped forward. What exactly are you proposing? Peace talks begin in 3 days. The territorial governor demands Apache representation. We demand cultural mediator who understands both worlds. The chief looked directly at Eva. She will serve this purpose. The crowd erupted in shocked voices. Eva felt the world spinning around her. From invisible seamstress to cultural mediator in one afternoon seemed impossible. She's just a seamstress, Mrs. Patterson protested. She has no authority. She has the authority of the sacred breath ceremony, Ayana said, speaking for the first time. Among my people, this grants her status equal to family. Judge Whitmore's face had gone pale. He stared at Eva with an expression she couldn't read. Fear mixed with something else. Pride, perhaps. The territorial governor will have to approve this, he said carefully. Then send word to him. Chief Standing Bear mounted his horse. The spirit sister will mediate our peace talks, or there will be no talks at all. The Apache riders departed as suddenly as they had arrived. Eva stood in the settling dust, still processing what had happened. This is madness, Dr. Henderson muttered. A seamstress mediating peace talks. Judge Whitmore remained silent, his eyes fixed on Eva with that strange expression. Sir? Eva asked him. What should I do? The judge seemed to weigh his words carefully. The territorial governor arrives tomorrow. He will make the final decision. As the crowd dispersed, Ayana approached Eva. You saved more than my life today, he said quietly. You may have saved 2 peoples from war. Eva looked down at her hands, still stained with herbs and creek water. Yesterday she had been nobody. Today she was a spirit sister with the power to determine peace or war. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. The territorial governor arrived at dawn with a cavalry escort and a scowl that could cut glass. Governor Marcus Kane had no patience for complications, and Eva represented the biggest complication of his career. A seamstress, he said, looking Eva up and down like she was a questionable piece of livestock. This is who the Apache demand as mediator. Judge Whitmore stood beside his desk, hands clasped behind his back. The sacred breath ceremony is legally recognized in territorial law, Governor. We cannot dismiss it without breaking our own treaties. Eva felt the weight of both men's stares. 3 days had passed since the rescue. 3 days of whispers, stares, and people crossing the street to avoid her. Can you read? Governor Kane asked. Yes, sir. Right? Yes, sir. Understand legal documents? Eva hesitated. Her secret education included law books stolen from Judge Whitmore's personal library. Some. Governor Kane sighed deeply. The alternative is war. The Apache have made that clear. He turned to Judge Whitmore. She's your responsibility. If she fails, this territory burns. Within the hour, Eva found herself in the courthouse meeting room with Ayanna and two other Apache representatives. Maps covered the long table. Treaty documents lay scattered across the surface. These are the disputed areas, Ayanna explained, pointing to sections marked in red. Water rights, grazing lands, sacred burial grounds. Eva studied the maps. Her years of reading had included geography and surveying texts. She could see the problems immediately. The boundaries make no sense, she said. They cut across natural water sources. Exactly. Ayanna smiled. You see what the white negotiators missed. Over the following days, Eva threw herself into understanding both sides. She spent mornings with Chief Standing Bear, learning Apache customs and grievances. Afternoons belonged to townspeople, listening to their fears and complaints. The Apache had legitimate concerns. White settlers diverted streams that fed their crops. Cattle grazed on land promised to remain untouched. Sacred sites were being mined for silver. The townspeople had fears too. Raids on outlying farms, missing cattle, children afraid to play outside the town limits. But Eva noticed something else. Judge Whitmore appeared everywhere she went. When she met with Apache leaders, he lingered nearby. When she studied maps in the courthouse, he found reasons to check on her progress. The judge watches you closely, Ayanna observed one evening. He's responsible for me now. This seems more personal. Eva had noticed it. 2. Judge Whitmore knew details about her childhood that seemed impossible. Her mother's favorite songs. The year Eva learned to read. Small things that only family would remember. She began paying closer attention to his office. Legal documents covered his desk, but some seemed older, personal rather than official. One afternoon, while Judge Whitmore met with the governor, Eva slipped into his chambers. A leather portfolio lay open on his desk. Inside, she found documents that made her breath catch. Birth certificates, old employment records, a faded photograph of a woman who looked remarkably like Eva. Sarah Morse, employed as housekeeper, 1823-1825, she read quietly. Her mother's name, her mother's employment dates. Eva had been born in 1825. Footsteps approached in the hallway. Eva quickly closed the portfolio and pretended to study treaty maps. Judge Whitmore entered, his eyes immediately going to his desk. Finding everything you need? Yes, sir. The water rights section is complex. He moved to his desk, casually straightening papers. His fingers lingered on the leather portfolio. Your mother was a remarkable woman, he said quietly. Eva's heart stopped. Sir? Intelligent. Kind. She deserved better than life offered her. The words hung in the air between them. Eva stared at the judge's face, seeing her own features reflected in his strong jaw and high cheekbones. Judge Whitmore, I should return to the negotiations. He nodded, but his eyes held secrets that seemed ready to spill. The peace talks were progressing when Burton Graves made his move. The land speculator had been quiet for days, watching the negotiations with calculating eyes. Eva was walking back from a meeting with Chief Standing Bear when she heard gunshots from the direction of town. Smoke rose from near the general store. She ran toward the sound, finding chaos in the main street. Windows were broken. A horse lay dead near the trading post. Apache attack! Graves shouted to anyone who would listen. They broke the peace talks. But something felt wrong. Eva examined the scene more carefully. The arrows in the wooden buildings were wrong. Apache arrows had specific fletching patterns. These looked different. Ayanna appeared beside her, his face grim. My people did not do this. I know. Eva knelt beside the dead horse, studying the wounds. These arrows came from a white man's bow. The angle is wrong for mounted Apache. Graves continued shouting about Apache treachery, but Eva noticed he avoided looking directly at the evidence. That evening, she and Ayanna searched the area around the staged attack. Behind the general store, they found a cache of incorrectly made arrows and a bow that belonged to one of Graves' men. He's trying to sabotage the peace talks, Eva realized. Why? Eva thought about the maps, the disputed territories, the valuable water rights. Land speculation. If there's war, the government will seize Apache territory and sell it cheap. They brought the evidence to Judge Whitmore and Governor Kane. Graves was arrested within hours, but the damage was partially done. Some townspeople remained convinced the Apache couldn't be trusted. The final negotiation happens tomorrow, Ayanna said. Everything depends on solving the water rights dispute. Ava nodded, but her mind was on the documents in Judge Whitmore's office. The answers to the territorial dispute might lie in understanding the full legal history of land ownership, and that history seemed to include secrets about her own family. Eva entered the courthouse archives before dawn. The final peace negotiations would begin in 6 hours, and the water rights dispute remained unsolved. Every legal document she had studied pointed to the same conclusion. The original land grants were incomplete. Someone had filed claims on territory that legally belonged to private individuals, but those individuals had never been identified in the official records. She pulled dusty ledgers from the highest shelves, property transfers, employment records, tax documents dating back to the territory's founding. The leather portfolio from Judge Whitmore's office haunted her thoughts. Her mother's employment record, the photograph, the judge's strange comment about her mother deserving better. In the oldest ledger, Eva found what she was looking for, a land grant from 1820, signed by the territorial governor. 2,000 acres, including the disputed water sources, granted to Cornelius Whitmore for services to the territory. But there was more. A marriage license from 1824, Cornelius Whitmore to Sarah Morse. Eva's hands shook as she turned the page. A birth certificate followed. Evangeline Whitmore, born 1825. Father, Cornelius Whitmore. Mother, Sarah Morse. Whitmore. The world tilted around her. She was not Eva Morse, seamstress and outcast. She was Evangeline Whitmore, legitimate daughter of Judge Cornelius Whitmore. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Eva quickly gathered the documents as Judge Whitmore entered the archives. "I wondered when you would find those," he said quietly. "Why?" The word came out as a whisper. Judge Whitmore sat heavily in a nearby chair, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. "Your mother was my housekeeper, but she became much more." His voice carried decades of regret. "I loved her. We married in secret because the law allowed it, but society would have destroyed us both." "Then why am I Eva Morse instead of Evangeline Whitmore?" "Your mother died when you were 2. Fever took her quickly." He stared at his hands. "I could have claimed you openly, but a white judge with a mixed-race daughter would have lost everything. I was a coward." Eva felt 22 years of confusion suddenly make sense. The mysterious payments for her needs, the judge's protective interest, the way he ensured she had access to books and education. "You've been watching over me." "From a distance. Making sure you were fed, clothed, educated." Judge Whitmore met her eyes. "I told myself I was protecting you by keeping you secret, but I was protecting myself. And now you're the key to peace between 2 peoples. And you have legal claim to the land that both sides are fighting over." Eva spread the documents across the table. The original land grant, the marriage license, her birth certificate. "The disputed territory belongs to me. Legally, yes. As my acknowledged heir, you inherit my holdings." Judge Whitmore stood, pacing to the window. That land includes the 3 main water sources both communities need. The implications struck Eva like lightning. She could solve the water rights dispute by sharing her inherited resources, but claiming her inheritance meant revealing the secret Judge Whitmore had protected for 20 years. "If you acknowledge me as your daughter, your career ends. Perhaps, or perhaps it's time this territory learned to accept the truth about families like ours." Ava studied her father's face, the same strong jawline she saw in her mirror, the same stubborn set to his shoulders when making difficult decisions. "The Apache and the townspeople will both question my legitimacy. Let them question. The law is clear." Judge Whitmore returned to the table. These documents prove your legal standing. Your inheritance gives you the authority to solve this conflict. And, personally, what happens between us? For the first time since Eva had known him, Judge Whitmore smiled with genuine warmth. I get to stop pretending I don't have a daughter. And you get to stop wondering why a judge cared so much about a seamstress. Eva gathered the documents, her mind racing through possibilities. The inheritance changed everything. Instead of mediating between two sides fighting over resources, she could provide the resources they both needed. The land could become neutral territory, shared water rights, a trading zone between communities. Exactly what I was hoping you would see. But I'll need support from both sides. Chief Standing Bear will have to accept my legal authority. The townspeople will have to accept me as your daughter. Judge Whitmore straightened his shoulders. Then we better prepare for the fight of our lives. 2 hours before the final negotiations, Eva stood before her mirror in her small cabin. The same face she had always seen, but now she understood its origin. Her father's determined chin, her mother's gentle eyes, preserved in the faded photograph. Ayanna knocked at her door. The chiefs are gathering. Are you ready? I have something to tell them, something that changes everything. The spirits knew this day would come, Ayanna said. When you gave me the sacred breath, you began a journey toward your true purpose. Eva folded the legal documents into her leather satchel. 22 years of living as someone else's discarded child were ending. Whatever came next would be as Evangeline Whitmore, legitimate heir and peacemaker. Let's go make history, she said. Outside, both communities were gathering at the courthouse. Apache leaders sat on one side of the building's steps. Townspeople clustered on the other. Between them, an empty space waited for someone brave enough to bridge the divide. Eva walked toward that empty space, carrying documents that would reshape everything they thought they knew about power, family, and the price of peace. The courthouse steps filled with tension as both communities gathered for the final negotiations. Apache leaders sat in dignified silence on the east side. Townspeople clustered nervously on the west, whispering among themselves. Governor Kane stood at the courthouse doors, his face grim. We have one last chance to avoid bloodshed. Miss Morse will present the final proposal. Eva stepped into the empty space between the two groups. Her leather satchel contained documents that would change everything, but first, she needed their attention. Before we discuss terms, you need to know who I really am. Murmurs rippled through both crowds. Chief Standing Bear watched her with sharp eyes. Mrs. Patterson frowned from the townspeople section. Judge Whitmore emerged from the courthouse, his face pale but determined. He moved to stand beside Eva. 23 years ago, I made a choice that shamed me, he announced, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. I married a woman I loved, but hid that marriage from this community. The townspeople stirred uneasily. Dr. Henderson stepped forward. Judge Whitmore, what does this have to do with our negotiations? Everything. Judge Whitmore placed his hand on Eva's shoulder. This woman is not Eva Morse, seamstress. She is Evangeline Whitmore, my legitimate daughter and legal heir. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Townspeople shouted questions and protests. Apache leaders exchanged meaningful glances. Impossible, Mrs. Patterson declared. She's been a seamstress her whole life. Eva opened her satchel and withdrew the documents. Marriage license, 1824. Birth certificate, 1825. Land grant deed, 1820. She held them high for all to see. I am Judge Whitmore's daughter, and I inherit his property holdings. Chief Standing Bear rose to his feet. Show me these papers. Eva approached the Apache leader and handed him the documents. He studied them carefully, his expression unreadable. The white man's law says these are binding, he announced to his people in Apache, then repeated in English. She speaks truth about her bloodline. This changes nothing, Dr. Henderson protested. Mixed blood or not, she has no authority here. Actually, she has more authority than anyone in this territory. Governor Kane stepped forward, having reviewed copies of the documents. Miss Whitmore inherits 2,000 acres, including all 3 disputed water sources. The crowd fell silent. Eva could hear her own heartbeat as the implications settled over both communities. "The land you've been fighting over belongs to me," she said clearly, "which means I can solve this dispute." Burton Graves pushed through the crowd, his face red with anger. Despite his arrest for staging the false attack, he had been released pending trial. "This is fraud," he shouted. "That girl can't inherit prime territory. It belongs to the territory for proper development." "The law disagrees," Judge Whitmore replied coldly. "My daughter's inheritance is legally sound." Eva stepped forward again, her voice growing stronger. "I propose to designate my inherited land as a shared resource zone. Apache grazing rights in the summer, town cattle rights in the winter, water sources open to both communities year-round." Chief Standing Bear nodded slowly. This could work. Shared resources instead of divided territory. But the townspeople were not convinced. Mrs. Patterson voiced what many were thinking. "Why should we trust her? She's been lying about who she is for years." "I wasn't lying," Eva replied firmly. "I was living the life my father chose for me, but now I'm choosing my own path." Ayanna stood up from among the Apache delegation. "The Spirit Sister has proven her wisdom and courage. My people will honor her proposal." "And if the townspeople refuse?" Governor Kane asked. Chief Standing Bear's expression hardened. "Then we take our grievances to the territorial capital, with federal mediators." The threat was clear. Federal intervention would mean military occupation and forced relocation for everyone. The townspeople shifted nervously. Dr. Henderson tried one last protest. "She has no experience managing land or resources." "She has something better," Judge Whitmore said. "She has the respect of both communities and the legal authority to enforce agreements." Eva opened a leather folder and withdrew a detailed map. She had worked on it through the night, marking water sources, grazing areas, and seasonal migration patterns. "3 months of studying your disputes taught me what you really need," she said, spreading the map on the courthouse steps. "Water access for everyone, grazing rights that don't overlap, trading opportunities that benefit both economies." The map showed a carefully planned system of shared resources. Apache summer camps near the eastern water sources. Town cattle using western pastures during winter months. A central trading post where both communities could exchange goods safely. Chief Standing Bear studied the map with growing approval. "This shows understanding of Apache seasonal patterns. And it protects town water rights during dry seasons," added a farmer from the crowd. Eva felt the mood shifting. Fear and suspicion were giving way to cautious hope. "There's one more thing," she announced. "I'll establish a permanent mediation office. Disputes between communities come to neutral arbitration instead of violence." "Governor," Kane smiled for the first time in days. "A practical solution with legal backing." Burton Graves made one final attempt to disrupt the proceedings. "This sets a dangerous precedent. Mixed blood inheriting prime territory." Judge Whitmore's voice cut through the air like a blade. "My daughter's blood is American blood. Her inheritance is American law. Anyone who disputes that disputes the territorial government itself." The crowd grew quiet. Eva looked across the faces of both communities, seeing acceptance slowly replacing hostility. "Do we have agreement?" she asked. Chief Standing Bear stepped forward first. "The Apache Nation accepts these terms." After a long moment, several townspeople nodded, then more. Finally, even Dr. Henderson grudgingly agreed. "Then let's sign the treaty," Governor Kane declared. Eva smiled, feeling the weight of 22 years lifting from her shoulders. She was no longer the invisible seamstress. She was Evangeline Whitmore, peacemaker and bridge between worlds. 6 months after the treaty signing, Eva stood in the courthouse chambers that had once belonged solely to her father. The morning sun streamed through windows she had cleaned as a child, never imagining she would one day hold court behind the same desk. A knock interrupted her review of the weekly mediation schedule. Ayanna entered, carrying a leather pouch decorated with Apache beadwork. "From Chief Standing Bear," he said, placing it on her desk. "Payment for grazing rights on the eastern pastures." Eva opened the pouch to find silver coins and a small turquoise pendant. The chief always included personal touches with official business, a sign of respect that still amazed her. "Any disputes this week?" she asked. "A minor boundary question near the trading post. Nothing serious." Ayana settled into the chair across from her desk. "The system works well." Indeed it did. The shared resource zone had eliminated most conflicts between the communities. Apache cattle grazed peacefully alongside town herds during designated seasons. The central trading post bustled with activity as both peoples exchanged goods, stories, and gradually, friendship. Judge Whitmore entered the chamber, carrying a stack of legal documents. At 53, he looked younger than he had in years. The burden of hidden secrets had aged him more than time itself. "The territorial capital approved your mediation certification," he announced, handing Ava an official certificate. "You're now a licensed arbitrator for the Arizona Territory." Ava traced the elegant script of her legal name, Evangeline Whitmore, Territorial Mediator. The title still felt surreal after a lifetime of invisibility. Mrs. Patterson filed another complaint. Judge Whitmore continued with a slight smile. "She claims the Apache are too successful at the trading post." "Success bothers her more than conflict did," Eva observed. Indeed, the trading post exceeded everyone's expectations. Apache crafts brought premium prices from traveling merchants. Town-manufactured goods found eager buyers among tribal communities throughout the region. Both economies prospered. Burton Graves had been convicted of attempting to incite violence and sentenced to 2 years in territorial prison. His land speculation schemes collapsed when Eva's inheritance eliminated the disputed territories he had counted on acquiring cheaply. A commotion outside drew their attention to the window. A group of children played in the courthouse yard, their laughter mixing Apache and English words with natural ease. Among them, Eva recognized several faces from both communities. "The next generation won't remember when we were enemies," Ayana observed. The door opened again to admit Dr. Henderson, looking uncomfortable but determined. Eva had expected this visit for weeks. "Miss Whitmore," he began formally, "I owe you an apology." Eva gestured to an empty chair. The doctor had been one of her harshest critics, questioning both her medical knowledge and her authority to mediate disputes. "You were right about Burton Graves," he continued, "about the staged attack, about the water rights solution." He paused, clearly struggling with the words. "About everything." "Thank you, doctor. There's more. I've been thinking about what you said regarding medical training." He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. The Territorial Medical Board approved a new program, apprenticeships for qualified candidates. Eva unfolded the paper. It was an application for medical apprenticeship, already partially filled out with her name and qualifications. "You're offering to train me?" "I'm requesting the privilege. Your knowledge already surpasses many certified physicians." Dr. Henderson's admission came grudgingly, but sincerely. "The territory needs more healers, especially ones who understand both cultures." Judge Whitmore beamed with pride. Eva felt tears threatening her composure. The man who had once refused to treat Ayana now wanted to teach her advanced medical techniques. "I accept," she said simply. After Dr. Henderson left, Eva walked to her father's private office. She had maintained her small cabin for sentimental reasons, but spent most evenings here, learning law and administration. The leather portfolio that had revealed her identity still sat on the desk. Eva opened it occasionally to study the photograph of her mother, searching for resemblances and imagining conversations they might have had. "She would be proud of you," Judge Whitmore said, joining her at the desk. "I hope so." "I know so. Sarah had the same stubborn determination to help people regardless of consequences." He touched the photograph gently. "She would have made the same choices you did." That evening, Eva and Ayana walked to the site where she had pulled him from the floodwaters. The creek flowed peacefully now, its banks lined with cottonwood trees that provided shade for the nearby trading post. "Do you ever regret giving me the sacred breath?" Ayana asked. Eva considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, powerless. defined entirely by what others thought she should be. The act of saving Ayanna had transformed her into someone with purpose, family, and the authority to shape her community's future. "Never," she said. That moment changed everything. For both of us. I came here expecting to negotiate from weakness. Instead, I found a spirit sister who made negotiation unnecessary. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the trading post where Apache and town children played together. The peace they had built felt solid, rooted in mutual benefit rather than temporary compromise. A rider approached from the direction of town. Eva recognized one of the territorial messengers who brought official correspondence. "Miss Whitmore," the rider called. "Urgent message from the governor." Eva accepted the sealed envelope with curiosity. Inside, she found an official request that made her gasp. "What is it?" Ayanna asked. "3 territories are requesting mediation services for land disputes." Eva reread the letter to make sure she understood correctly. "They want me to establish mediation programs across the Southwest." Judge Whitmore had followed them to the creek. When Eva showed him the letter, his smile lit up his entire face. "My daughter, the peacemaker," he said with obvious pride. Eva looked around at the thriving community they had built together. Children played safely while their parents conducted business as equals. The creek that had nearly claimed Ayanna's life now watered fields that fed both peoples. One act of compassion had rippled outward to create something beautiful. And now those ripples would spread even further, carrying the promise of peace to communities that had forgotten how to trust each other. The former seamstress had found her true calling at last.